You're listening to a podcast by Oak Magazine. I would like to acknowledge the Dja Dja Wurrung people as the traditional owners of the land on which this episode was recorded. I pay my respects to their elders, past and present, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander cultures. Welcome to A Friend of Mine, a series of conversations with some incredible and inspiring women in business from regional and rural Australia. I'm Kimberly Finesse, your host and the founder and editor of Oak Magazine, and I cannot wait to introduce you to some amazing female entrepreneurs who will share with you their experience and knowledge of what it takes to start, grow and scale a successful business. So let me introduce you to a friend of mine. Sarah is a paediatric critical care nurse at the Royal Children's Hospital and has cared for many critically injured children and those with complex medical needs whose parents navigate the medical world from home every single day. Many of these children reside in regional and rural Australia. As a mum of four, Sarah knows too well the difficulties that rural families have in accessing specialised paediatric care, and it is her mission to bridge this gap to provide paediatric carer training and education to carers and parents of children, regardless of their postcode. Through her company, Peds Education, Sarah is driven to reach the unreachable through hybrid and online training. She hopes this increased access to specialised training will improve support, reduce the burden of care, and improve the outcomes of children and their community. Sarah shares with us why she applied for the award, what she has learned about herself in the process, and the importance of her project. Let me introduce you to my friend and Victorian finalist, Sarah. Hello, Sarah, and welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Kimberly. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Thank you for being part of our special little series, which focuses on your journey as one of 5 Victorian finalists for the AgriFutures Rural Women's Award for 2023.
It's very exciting.
It is. It's hugely exciting. Do you think you've celebrated it enough?
Oh, what a great question to start off with. I have celebrated personally. I think I celebrated initially after the pitch and the interview in Melbourne. I have been so incredibly busy over the last couple of weeks that I don't think I've actually digested at all, but I've got a few days off now before the award ceremony on Monday night. So I think I'm going to just let myself sit with it and enjoy this next few days and be proud of what I've achieved over the last little while.
Yeah, I wish I had celebrated more. I want my time again. I don't know if I'm allowed to go back and have a redo, but I was just like, I didn't have a little party or didn't go out for tea or any of that, and I really wish I had have. Because I'm just not sure if it'll happen again.
After the actual night, after the day that we'd done all of our interviews, all of the girls had a drink together at the end, and it was really lovely to celebrate with one another and just, really celebrate each other's achievements and being rural women.
Oh, where was my invite? Jeez.
Oh, you went home on the train.
I did actually. I made the train home, so I was absolutely wrapped with that, with my leftovers from tea. But anyway, I'm sure the whole carriage was really impressed with the smell of garlic and marinated lamb, everyone's best friend. But what I thought, now your project, it focused on the NDIS, which I don't feel that everyone would know a lot about. It's sort of one of those things that we know little bits, but I think what most of us know is it's a very complicated system. But there was a statistic from your presentation that I thought was really interesting, and you've got a little bit more to expand on it. But that was that by June this year, so 2023, 5% of all children will be on the NDIS. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right, which is quite a surprising statistic. And yes, you are very correct when you say the NDIS is complicated. I have done a deep dive in the last 18 months or so since this has become a really big part of what I'm doing at PEDS. But yeah, just expanding on that. So 5% of all Australian children by June 2023 on the NDIS scheme, and almost 3% of those children will be residing in regional, rural, and remote Australia. So we know that as the level of remoteness increases, so does the number of children who are living with disability, which is quite surprising, and certainly presents many challenges for those families.
And you shared a few stories in your presentation as well. And you were just sort of explaining that there's so much more, isn't there? And not a lot of support either.
Yeah, absolutely. So, the spectrum of disability is absolutely massive. And at PEDS, our focus is on the physical disability aspects that we are able to train parents and carers in the community how to manage. So, we're talking about things like how to suction a child who needs suctioning, how to care for a peg, which is a different way that a child is fed, so into their tummy directly, or children who have gone home with tubes to feed or to have medications through. So that's the side of the NDIS spectrum that we sit on at PEDS, and that we're focusing on for our training. But certainly as remoteness increases, the access to specialised services, in particular paediatric services, decreases dramatically.
It's really concerning, isn't it? Like if we dug right into that in an episode, just so concerning, and things need to be done about it, obviously. And that's why you have your project, which is incredible. In terms of the award, has that been on your radar for a while?
Yeah, it's something that I've always looked at, but it's interesting, Kimberly. I grew up in regional Victoria, and then I moved to the big smoke for work, and I was in the city for a number of years, but always had my heart in the country. And so we moved out to the country about 8 or 9 years ago, and have really set up our life out here in rural Victoria. I still work in the city, but I have established my life in rural Victoria, and it's where I want my children to grow up. But I think for a long time, the thought of me being a rural woman was actually quite hard to comprehend. Certainly something I wanted to call myself, but it was almost a stigma that you had to be, born and raised in rural Victoria and been living on a farm your entire life. But it's certainly not that at all. So whilst I'd been looking at the award for some time, it's really only in the last sort of 18 months that I've really embraced that title of rural women, and know that the work that I'm doing is just so instrumental for families. And I think living in the area, knowing the challenges that someone who doesn't have children with disabilities faces, let alone those who have those additional challenges that they're facing every single day.
And you just touched on a point that I think is really important. What I love about the AgriFutures Rural Women's Award is them trying to break down that stereotype of what a rural woman looks like, air quote marks. I mean, we just have to Google rural woman and have a look at the images that come up, and it's an akubra or a farm hat and checked shirt and pearls or whatever, and that couldn't be further from the truth. And I think just with my own experience with the media, especially the day after being announced national runner-up, like a couple of those questions actually came through. Was that, oh, you're not a typical rural woman though, and there's ways that you can answer that, and the way that you want to is just like next question. But yeah, it's just, we are all, I think, all of us that are coming through, just really trying to work on that stereotype and break down that stigma, and just, that there are so many different elements that make us rural. So,
and it's not just about living rural, is it? It's about, you trying to really contribute to the growth and the sustainability of a rural community into the future. We don't want to lose our beautiful rural communities. Yeah.
Absolutely. Now, why did you apply? What was it what was that big catalyst? Was it something that you noticed as soon as applications opened, or did you sit on it for a while, or was it, sort of like me and just that 11th hour mad dash?
I sat on it for a long time, actually. I think probably the catalyst for me, I have 3 sons, and then last year I gave birth to a beautiful little girl who's our delightful full stop. And I actually think since her birth, I have become more intense than ever before to sort of show her what she can do as a rural woman and as a girl growing up. And I think, that really led me to look to these platforms where we can really support and encourage girls and young women and older women to really embrace who they are and to really celebrate what they're doing in the community. So, yes, I sat on it for a while. And yes, it was last minute for me to apply because I had so much self-doubt, and I had that horrible thing called imposter syndrome where I just thought, no, I can do it. I'd done half of the application, and then I close it down and I get it back out again and try again. And then in the end, it was my husband who said, you have to give yourself a platform to showcase the project that is just going to change so many lives. And if you don't do it, you never will. So that was the real sort of the tipping point for me to apply in the first place. And I'm just so glad I did, and I'm so glad I've had his support and the support of so many other people who have been cheering me on from the sidelines.
Yeah, husbands, partners, whoever we live with, they make great cheerleaders. Absolutely, they have to live with it all, the highs and the lows. How did you feel during the interview process, specifically like what we've just really done, and that was the in-person presentation? So, you've got your 15-minute I suppose PowerPoint, if you might, presentation, and then we just pretty much ask you 101 questions, like for as long as we want. But no, generally for, I don't know, it was about 20 minutes, do you reckon?
Yeah, it went pretty fast, to be honest. Yes, about 20 minutes. Yeah. Look, as someone who's used to speaking in front of others, I do this in my role at Peds Education, but also as a nurse. I'm constantly speaking to parents at the bedside and delivering, handovers to numerous teams. So I'm certainly not afraid of speaking in front of people. So the pitch delivery itself wasn't something I was scared of doing. However, I have never been more nervous about anything in my entire life. And I reflected on why that was. And I think it comes down to the fact that this project it's not about me or positioning myself on a pedestal. I think, this project has so many implications for these little people and families in rural areas who actually need this to happen. So there was a lot riding on it. And I think I felt the pressure from that perspective. But in saying that, I actually sat with that and I actually let myself feel nervous because I do much better when I'm under pressure. So it's a strategy I've always used. And I acknowledge that and I let myself sit with that and let myself feel all those feels. But then I do something about it. And that something for me is what's called military breathing. This is going to sound very strange, but my kids actually call it rainbow breathing. And they actually told me to do this on the day of the interview because they're very in tune with me. And they said to me, Mum, you look really panicky. And I said, I know I am really nervous actually. And they said to me, you've got to practice your rainbow breathing, which is very similar to the military breathing. And what it is you breathe in for 4 and then out for 4 and you picture a box as you do it. So yes, that's how I felt during the interview process. Once I was in there, it was, so much more relaxing than what I probably envisioned it to be. And of course, you were all lovely panelists and made me feel very, very comfortable.
Oh, good, because I felt like I had a really intense concentration face.
You're all very close. And you need to be in a bit bigger room, so you're very, very close.
Well, yeah, it was a surprise to me, or I was sitting on a little table together. But hey, I suppose it maybe makes it feel a little bit more intimate, and that it is a conversation, because that's exactly what it is when it gets to those Q&As. But talking about that breathing, something that I'd picked up in our media training at Summit in Albury from Rosh. She is an incredible media trainer. She was just saying, and we went outside to do this, was to like hang our heads over. So usually you'd go find a toilet if you're in an event, hang yourself in half. So head down and just obviously a couple of deep breaths, some star jumps, something to get rid of that nervous energy. It was so interesting. I just emceed an event where Mark Bouris was the keynote speaker. I have a bit of a crush on Mark Bouris. My husband is well aware of that. Yeah, and it was in front of 200 people, sort of a big deal, and you're on a big stage with bright lights. But yeah, same thing. Like I was just trying to move and shake out those nerves. And as you said, it's just getting your breathing under control. Like I think that's the biggest thing about whether it's an interview, podcasting, standing up and doing a presentation. Once you get that breathing, and it's those big, deep ones, I don't know, everything just follows, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's a bit like labour, isn't it? Giving birth. When they say actually focus on your breathing, and if you do, then actually you find, you can do it a lot better. But yes.
I'll have to take your word for that. I had Caesars, so didn't have to focus on my breathing so much as worrying about whether I was going to pass out or something. So but I mean, that would be a whole nother podcast series, yes. I think. Tell me, did you learn anything about yourself through the process that was a little bit of a surprise? Because it is intense, and you are standing up as yourself, that whole tall poppy syndrome. I mean, you've sort of got to put it to the side, don't you? Because you really do need to stand up and say, hey, I'm good at this, this, and this, and this is, and I'm confident about that.
Absolutely. And that's really hard to do. And I think I found that in particular really hard to do because as a nurse and as a mum, and I think I mentioned this in the interview, there's not a lot of time for me. And so actually celebrating this award as my own and owning it is actually a challenging thing for me to do. But at the same time, it's a really great learning process is to actually tune into what your passions are and what your strengths are as well and celebrate those. It's really such a great skill in terms of your self-confidence and your self-awareness. So, look, I think I learned that I have more of a passion for this than I actually first discovered. The more I really deep dived into why I was applying for this project, I really deep dived into the statistics and the actual situation in rural and remote Australia for these kids and their families. And I think it has made me so much more passionate than I ever was. So I knew all along that I was hell-bent on making it happen. But the more I think I really understood my why, the more I realized how much this has actually been a part of me for a very long time. And yes, you could say easily correlates to my role as a nurse in my career, but I think it stems back from my childhood. And I think I spent a lot of time reflecting on that too when I was preparing my my pitch. I grew up around a lot of children with disabilities, both in families as well as our community. And I think there was such a strong village connection in my life growing up, and that was so vital for those children as well as that family unit. And so to be able to replicate that for so many children in rural areas is something that I think I really want to do for them, because I know the impact that having a strong community and a strong village has on the child and the family, regardless of whether they have a disability or not. So I think, realizing that passion that we're not just fixing a problem, but we're creating a village and providing a community with, lifelong education that is sustainable into the future is just something really amazing that I learned through the process. Another thing that I learned too, that I've always put myself down for being a really bad business person. I always say that I'm a great nurse, but business is really hard and something that doesn't come naturally to me. But the more I delved into the project, the more I realized that actually, I actually do know one or two things about business. And I do celebrate the learning I've had over the last 5 years that I have been the co-founder of PEDS. So yeah, that was something that I really learned about myself and have been celebrating and sort of building on since the pitch as well.
There's no handbook to how to. I mean, there is how to start a business for dummies or something, but it's just a learning curve, I think, the whole way through. And I think as women, we're just a bit more vulnerable that, about our highs and lows and how hard it is. Whereas maybe the other half aren't so much, it all seems easy for them, for guys. Yeah. But, business, I think they need to bring that into schools. I honestly do. Like
I
how to, yeah.
100% agree. Yes, a lot of people out
Yeah.
there with fantastic ideas. Yeah.
Oh, definitely. So, I mean, you've sort of touched on it throughout this little chat about why, your project is important, but there was actually some other little bits of your pitch and your project sort of, combining them, that just sort of sparked my interest. And it's because I'm a paper lover and I love storytelling. One of them was the book.
Yeah.
Sorry, but I don't have any of this information in front of me at the
Yeah.
minute.
Yeah.
But can you tell me a little bit about this book series? Like, and I didn't really get to ask enough of it on the day or at the evening at our tea, and I'm really interested. Tell me about this book, what it's called, what it's for, and where's it going?
Yeah, great. I'm glad you mentioned that because, a big portion of the prize money would be to go towards becoming NDIS registered. But there is another portion that I want to use to publish the first of a series of books to support rural families as well as rural kindergartens and schools and community centres with just some really light-hearted material for children who have complex medical conditions. Now, to everyone, that word or that sentence probably doesn't mean a whole lot, but we're talking about children who have been born with really severe medical issues, and that might be things like cardiac conditions, so heart conditions, or they've been born with genetic issues or metabolic issues, and that has caused them to become disabled in some aspect. So the first book that has already been written and is waiting to be published is called My Patchwork Heart, and it is all about a child who has been born with a congenital cardiac issue, and it's not specific so that many children can relate to it. And it basically just tells the story. It's the mum telling the story of the baby from birth and surgery at one of the major children's hospitals, and then returning home and what their little zipper means on their chest. And it's just told sort of through the eyes of a child and the mother in a very simple storytelling way with some really beautiful graphics. So that's the first one. There's another one called My Belly is a Pincushion for children who have diabetes, which is increasing dramatically in the community. And then the other one is called My Feet Are Wheels, so for children who are using a wheelchair. So yeah, just some lighthearted books for kids who have those conditions to relate to. They can see them in their libraries or in their community centres, and there's something that parents can buy for their children if they have those conditions, but something that we want to be able to give for free to those rural families who are experiencing this, as well as those community centres and schools.
Did you write these yourself, Sarah?
Yes, I did. Yes, I've always
Look
loved
at
writing.
you,
Yeah.
writer. Update LinkedIn.
Look, I haven't been published yet, so I can't put writer yet.
You can. You've written them.
I have.
Publisher, that's probably the one where it's, that next step. But oh my gosh, you can put writer there for sure. And publisher, I'm sure, would soon follow. Have you written before? Like, where did this all come from? Had you always known you could write stories? Did you have like a little affinity to, writing things as a younger kid, or?
Yeah, I've always loved writing stories. I grew up with my father. Every single night he would lie in the passageway of I was one of six, and we all shared rooms. And he would lie in the passageway and tell us stories that he would make up himself. And I think it stemmed right back from then. And my sister's a very good writer and would write me a whole bunch of novels. I was a big reader, so she would just write me novels when I had nothing else to read. And yeah, I used to write songs and I used to write little books when I was growing up. But I haven't done it for a very long time. So this is a really lovely way to combine that sort of childhood love as well as, a little bit of my career and where I want to head as well.
Oh my God, that's beautiful. Well, I hope, regardless of obviously what happens at the announcement, that these do, come out and see the light of day. And I think they're books where we're just opening our kids' world really too, isn't it? To be more acceptable of so many different things and have diversity in what they're reading. I mean, you'd be the same. Your kids would have come home with reader books, for however many years, and they all are pretty similar, aren't they? There's
Yes,
not
they
much.
are.
not much difference,
Yeah, it's just so
exciting
lovely
stuff.
for a child who has experienced these things to see themselves, as that inclusiveness. And
Yeah.
we know that having dolls and having books about children with Down syndrome has made an incredible impact. So, it's just that next step further and just sort of adding to that cohort of material for children.
Just a conversation starter. Sometimes that's all it needs to be, to have that conversation. Excellent. So exciting. Well, it is a mini series. Again, I probably could talk to you about that whole book aspect, that hidden talent, and really interested in it, and that whole, even just the publishing journey, like how you go about that and, what that looks like. Have you got a publisher in mind as a
Yeah,
side
I'm
note?
just going to
Yep.
self-publish to start with. Yeah, I
Yeah.
have a
Yep.
friend who's an author, so she sort of put me on the path. So yes,
Perfect.
I've got a plan in place.
Awesome. Amazing. I was going to say there's a few that have popped up on my Insta lately, that sort of look after, I suppose, small publishers, which is really
Mm,
exciting, and especially women.
yeah, great.
In regional and rural areas. So all very exciting. But thank you so much. And again, I've learnt so much about PEDS education and learn a little bit more about the NDIS, which is always important, I think. And that statistic's probably just stuck there at the moment. And I suppose that impact it has on our rural and remote communities. And it's just so exciting that there are people like yourself that are just so bloody clever, Sarah, and so passionate and trying to do something about it. So all the best with PEDS education, and look forward to celebrating in a few days in Melbourne.
Thank you so much, Kimberly. It's been such a pleasure chatting.
My pleasure.
Now, before you take off with all that inspiration and knowledge, we'd love for you to leave a review on our podcast so that we can continue to amplify women's voices in the media. And if you have any questions, we'd like to celebrate a win, you can always connect with us on Facebook and Instagram at Oak Magazine AU. I'm so glad we've met and that now you know a friend of mine.